Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of 5 Minute Gaming News, the show that may or may not be 5 minutes. Today in the news, it's just one of those days, y'all. Right out the gate, first thing I see reported over on Forbes, Call of Duty is being accused of stealing a new skin from Dr. Disrespect's Dead Drop game. Now, first things first, I don't give a damn about that game. NFT, Web3 nonsense is nothing I want to promote or even talk about, really. But I do care about blatant theft. I know what you're thinking. Jesse, games use art assets inspired by other games all the time. A perfect example is Fortnite. No, I'm not talking about things like Vegeta or Chun-Li. I'm talking about things like Sledgehammer being pretty much Blackbeard from Rainbow Six Siege, or how Arachne is like pretty much Widowmaker from Overwatch. So the question really becomes, when is imitation not the sincerest form of flattery? Well, this might be it. The Doomsayer skin, which was released for sale this week, features a very cool looking holographic skull with like a hoodie over it, and it's pretty neat. The only problem is that it looks exactly like a skin posted on Twitter by Robert Bowling, ex-Call of Duty creative strategist who now works for Dead Drop. Apparently, it's one of the NFT avatars, which, again, barf. But that's not the point. Just look at the skin in Call of Duty. I mean, it seems pretty shameless. Now, could this be a coincidence? Of course, sure. Stuff like this happens all the time. The idea of like a cool skull thing with a hoodie is common enough that I'm sure my boy Skeletor has a few things to say about it. But the track record for Call of Duty lately has been atrocious. Back in June, Call of Duty Vanguard was called out for wanting to sell an operator skin that was a super floofy dog soldier. But the internet caught on to the fact that it was originally artwork by a Chinese artist, and they were just straight up stealing it. I mean, come on, look at this thing. It is a direct ripoff. They just like switched the main hand. And then, in the end, with all the bad press, the character just vanished. And what's so insane about this, if they had just approached the artist Sale Lin and said, hey, we would like to pay you to create that character, I would have to believe that they would have been like, yeah, hell yeah, that's amazing. I get to see a 3D rendered in-game version of this thing. But of course, why do that when you can just take it? So we'll see what happens with this one. I have a feeling that it'll probably be taken down as well. But if it's already up for sale and people are already buying it, what do you do then? Do you refund them? I don't know, y'all. It definitely seems like a big problem and some serious bad press for Call of Duty. In other news, speaking of bad press, it's time to take a look at Nintendo's not so wholesome side. On Kotaku, they've got an article about a young woman who was a games tester at Nintendo for nearly a decade, who then had to quit over the frat-like atmosphere, which is something that comes up a lot in the gaming world these days. It looks like things started to spiral once a new team member was brought in who started posting memes in chat about like how Vaporeon was the best Pokemon to have sex with and how Paimon from Genshin Impact was hot or whatever, that kind of shit. She became uncomfortable, and when she went to her bosses at Aerotech, which is the company that was contracted by Nintendo, she claims that in response, Aerotech management warned her to be less outspoken. She said that her friends from work in group chat blamed her for reporting the incident, and that the only repercussion the translator faced was being assigned sexual harassment training. Aerotech had previously fired one of its contractors for making comments about the color of her underwear, but the translator who made the sexual comments this time in group chat apparently is a full-time Nintendo employee. So I guess that means they couldn't fire him because he works for Nintendo, not Aerotech? Now, according to Kotaku, Aerotech isn't the best of companies when it comes to a sordid past. There's discrimination and union busting and all sorts of stuff. Kotaku also spoke to 10 other sources for the article who worked at Nintendo at different points in the past decade, and they told a story of corporate culture where sexist behavior was commonplace, and very little action was taken to address it. And every time I read stuff like this, for whatever company, I'm reminded that we are at that point in gaming culture where this is just going to happen more and more. Because for decades, let's be very clear on this, video games were kind of defined by like white male nerds, right? It's just the truth of it. And as more and more people of color or women or whoever join the expanding culture of video games and the workforce of creating them, it means this long-established dude culture is just going to have to change as well. And I think for a lot of people, that's hard. It's hard to change, and sometimes you just don't want to, because it was fine before. You know what I mean? Like, 5 years ago it was fine. Why is it different now? It's the same thing when people talk about crunch culture. And they're like, well, when I was coming up in the games industry, crunch culture was a thing of pride. Like, I stayed in the office for 3 days straight. Well, things are changing and you need to change with them. I think that's the overall message and moral here. And I think companies need to step it up and be better about this kind of thing. Obviously, this is unacceptable. I'm sure we'll find out more as time goes on, but I would love to know what you think. That's why the comments exist. Please fill them with your thoughts. This is the part where I'm just going to shamelessly ask you to subscribe. Please, we're so close to 1 million. I think we can do this. It would mean the world to me. And if you're already subscribed, give it a like. It'll bump it up on the listings of things, and more people will see it, and then maybe they'll subscribe. It would be just a wonderful thing, and I thank you so very much. Anyway, that's it for the show, and I'll see y'all tomorrow with another episode of 5 Minute Gaming News.